with another episode of Multiplex Loves Movies. We are here to talk about Richard Linklater films in honor of his upcoming release, Where'd You Go, Bernadette, which is coming out into theaters this weekend. I'm personally excited to see it, but I've got some other people here with me, including Kaleb Lil Bo Boatman. Boatman, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing very good. Nothing has gone wrong lately. Doing very great. Anyway, I'm very happy to talk about Richard Linklater. One of like the first kind of directors that I was like paying attention to. Like I was like 14 when Boyhood came out, and that's when I like first started kind of getting into movies more seriously. So it was like I started paying attention to that and all of the other work and stuff.
Yeah, and then the other person here is the reason this episode is happening at all. We were going to talk about Angry Birds tonight, but somebody said, "Hey Tim, fuck you. You shouldn't do that. You should talk about Linklater." That's Paul Oyama. How you doing?
Good. I'm excited. We're going to be talking about Fast Food Nation for an hour and a half, so I'm super hyped for that. Just kidding. That movie's horrible, but no, I'm super excited. Where Do You Go, Bernadette has kind of been moved around on the release calendar, so it's kind of easy to forget that it was even coming out. But I mean, I've read the book. It's an amazing book. I'm excited to see the movie, and Linklater is one of my favorite directors, so I'm super stoked for this.
Yeah, Boatman kind of gave his experience with Linklater so far, the first director he kind of was looking at. For me, my experience with Linklater, the first was School of Rock when I was a kid, but I didn't know it was like a Linklater movie. I just saw School of Rock. And then when Boyhood came out, same thing. It was around the time when I was really getting into film. And I was like, oh, who's this? And went on his filmography. I've never seen the Before trilogy, haven't seen any of them. I'm very sparse with his movies. I've only seen a few, I know, which is why we're only going to talk about a few certain movies tonight. But Paul, what's your overall experience with Linklater? How'd you first come to him?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone our age saw School of Rock and obviously didn't know, oh, this is the guy that did Slacker. Like, I saw that film from a very young age. But no, I mean, School of Rock was the first one that I saw. And then, yeah, it's a director that I've sort of grown to love sort of over the years. I think the second one that I ever saw I saw Dazed pretty early when I was like 10 or so. And then it's kind of just been randomly peppered in throughout. And then at one point, I kind of made it a point to go through his entire filmography. But yeah, I mean, again, I said earlier, he's probably one of my 5 or so favorite directors of all time. And so in his movies, I've watched like countless times. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, I want to see the Before trilogy, but I'm waiting until that Criterion box set drops in price so I can buy that and watch it, because that's what I want to do. But like I said, we're going to talk about a few specific films. We each picked a film of his to bring in and talk about. So we'll start with my film. Which we've already mentioned. School of Rock is the one I picked because it's the one that I think of. I don't really think of Boyhood. I think Boyhood's pretty good, but it's not one I revisit a lot. But School of Rock, I mean, is it hard? Is it weird to say it's a classic? I love this movie. This movie's hilarious. Like, Boatman, do you like this movie?
Yeah, no, I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody who doesn't like School of Rock. I think everybody at least likes it. I'm one of the people that likes it. I don't like love it, but I do. I like it a lot. I can't really find too much wrong with it. It's a fun little movie. Jack Black is like at his peak. He's at the height of his powers, and he's like he's kind of doing like maybe his best comedic work, at least one of his best comedic performances ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, I've watched this movie again for the show, and I think that it's aged pretty well, like, all things considered. Like, a lot of not older, I mean, the movie came out in 2003, so it's not that old, but, like, there's a lot of movies that just, this younger genre type stuff that doesn't age well in today's day, and this one has aged pretty beautifully. All the kids are great in the movie. The music's really fun. It's a good time. What about you, Paul?
Yeah, shout out Miranda Cosgrove, early career appearance in this for her. But no, it's interesting that this is one of the probably more widely seen Linklater movies, because this is like the least Linklater movie to ever Linklater, I think. Sure. Most of his movies, I think, skew towards adults. Even something like Boyhood, I think, is meant for an audience of adults to understand sort of the youth and growing up as a kid. Whereas I think this is very youth-centric. And I think that's a really interesting kind of take. It's very outside of his usual box. It's a little less kind of like plotless. Like it kind of has more of a specific direction that it takes the story in. But it's probably one of the ones that I've seen the most. I watched this a lot as a kid. Obviously not knowing any of the Linklater stuff, and then only later I revisited it. And yeah, it's interesting just because the way that Dewey's relationship to the kids, I think that's like one thing that's aged really great, is like this affectionate father figure to these people. And then it's a bond that grows over time. You know, he starts for all the wrong reasons. He's not even supposed to be there teaching, but then he kind of just bonds with these kids and then creates like a special moment for all of them in their lives.
Yeah, did he write this as well, or was this a...
No, this was Mike White wrote it. The guy who plays Jack Black's roommate. He wrote it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I did not know that, because I feel like he's written a lot of the other movies other than this that I've seen.
Fun fact, Mike White also co-wrote the Emoji Movie, so for those playing at home.
That's going to be a fucking yikes from me, dog. But nonetheless, I feel like he writes a lot of his movies, and I don't know, this must be the only... What other ones has he written? I feel like...
Did he write
must be one of the few.
Because I feel like he probably didn't.
Which one?
The Bad News Bears remake with Billy Bob.
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that. I forgot he did that. Oh my god.
He didn't write Mean Orson Welles either, I believe.
So it's just like, a lot of
that might be really one of the only ones, I think.
There are quite a few. I'm looking at it right now. There are a couple he did not.
Oh, Bad News Bears, Suburbia Tape. Yeah. So, but as far as his like sort of major works, this is like really the only one that he has not.
That he didn't write. But I mean, like you said, Paul, it is very like out of the other Linklater stuff I've seen, not very Linklatery. Like I watched one of his films today, which we're going to talk about later, so I don't want to get into it too much. But a lot of his movies, I don't want to say they don't have plots, but they have a driving force, but they don't have like the normal ABC plot.
I think it's pretty plotless. It's pretty plotless. It's pretty plotless. I think that's sort of a goal of his. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, like a lot of his movies are.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I feel like
I think that's a fair thing to say about that. I don't think that's an insult necessarily. No, obviously, Slacker is the biggest case of like that movie is literally just an amalgamation of random people doing random things.
Yeah,
but like I think a lot of his movies don't have a plot.
Yeah. And I feel like School of Rock is one of the few that does, and he does it very, very well. I mean, it just like it kind of slips right in, but it is one of those. Yeah, like you said, Paul, just like you don't really. It's the least Linklatery of it, but because of Jack Black's performance, the relationship with the kids, all that jazz, like it's really fun. It's always stuck with me. And like I said at the top, when I realized it was a Linklater movie, I was just like, oh, okay, this is. I did not know this.
It's one of those things I think you double take when you first find out because it feels very out of character.
And I also feel like it was Linklater's kind of attempt. Like after that, he kind of tried to go more and like to these broad kind of popular movies like Bad News Bears. I feel like Fast Food Nation is almost kind of going for more of like a broad comedy style. At least, I mean, it's not good. But
no, I know. I'm thinking about the movie.
It's going for more. At least some stuff in it. I would say like Greg Kinnear's part, where it's like there's poop in the burgers. I feel like that's more going for like a broad comedy style rather than the more subtle comedy that you usually get from Linklater.
We got people in the comments. Doug Castle, Dazed and Confused was his introduction to Linklater. I feel like that was the world's introduction to Linklater. We will definitely be getting into that. Jonathan Peck also saying School of Rock is his. Jonathan Peck is just throwing. I don't know if he is a big Mike White enthusiast and just knows that he was on The Amazing Race twice and Survivor. But he also agrees that the songs in the movie Nazario, it's amazing. This and Bernie are probably the best roles for Jack Black. I know that Paul has some thoughts on Bernie as a film.
And I really like.
We will not be talking about that one today. I can promise you that.
That is not one of the films we picked. But I mean, just to close it up on School of Rock, like I think it's just a movie that, like if you haven't seen it, go watch it. You will enjoy it. Like, I don't know anybody who doesn't like this movie. Like, my wife thinks it's fine, but I don't know anybody who actively.
I think that's like the low bar for the most part, unless maybe someone has like a weird personal thing against Jack Black. But I would say for the most part, people at least at base level like the movie, if not.
It's it's just such a heartwarming movie.
I know it's very nostalgic for a lot of people as well.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. When they did like the 10-year reunion pictures and like concert or whatever with Jack Black and all the kids and whatever, that was my jam. I remember seeing that.
One thing before we finish talking about School of Rock, one note that I always found really cool about the movie, the kid who plays piano, I don't remember the character's name.
Lawrence.
Yes, Lawrence. He wanted to back out of the movie because he felt he wasn't right for the part. He told that to Richard Linklater, and he said that's exactly why he was right for the part, because he's not confident.
That's like in the movie.
Yeah.
When he calls him Mr. Cool, he's not. Oh my God, that's crazy. That's actually a really cool story. I didn't know that. But we are going to move on to actually a movie that came out before School of Rock. This is arguably probably his most famous movie other than Boyhood. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody.
I think it's more famous than Boyhood in some ways.
Yeah.
But this was Boatman's pick. Boatman, you picked Dazed and Confused. I'm going to be honest with the audience. I've seen Dazed and Confused once, about 2 years ago. There was a friend of mine who took me Criterion Collection shopping, and he said, Tim, this is a must-own Criterion. You must buy it. So I bought it. I watched it. I enjoyed it. But I haven't seen it since. So my opinions on this movie are going to be way less valid than you two. But Boatman, you chose this one. Why did you choose this one as the one you wanted to talk about for Linklater?
This movie is in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I love this film. I love all the characters. It's very iconic in a lot of ways. Like, all right. We all know that. But I love a lot of the other side characters. I love like Adam Goldberg and
Anthony Rapp.
Anthony Rapp. Mike, I want to dance. Like, I love that whole storyline.
Dance.
I love that stuff. I love all this kind of side storylines going on. It's a very like side character style movie. There is sort of like two main characters, but even then, like they probably combined get only 50% of the screen time. Like they each probably get like a quarter of the screen time, but like that's more than most people in that movie get. It's a very like ensemble movie, and I love that about it. And I love all the different types of like This Day and the Last Day of School, and we can't talk about without talking about the amazing soundtrack. I think that's one of the things that people think about first about this movie. You hear Sweet Emotion, like that opening, and then all the other great songs in the movie. I absolutely love it. I love all the characters. I've seen it a lot. Fantastic film.
Yeah, it's probably this is the movie that announces Linklater, right, to the world, like for sure. And even before I had seen it and knew it was a Linklater movie, it was one of those movies that everybody was like, you've got to see Dazed and Confused. Oh, you've never seen Dazed and Confused? Oh my God, like you got to watch it. So it's definitely one that like a lot of people gravitate towards. Again, I've only seen it once, but there's actually another movie which we'll talk about that I actually liked more. Maybe it's recency, but we'll see when we get there. Paul, what about you with Dazed and Confused?
Just a little kind of, it's crazy that this movie could have went in so many different directions, because it's originally is actually, I think it was supposed to be the whole movie was supposed to be set to ZZ Top's Fandango, and it was just going to be people riding around in a car having conversations, and it's going to be two shots, like a shot and a reverse shot from inside the car of people having conversations. Wow. And that is just a totally different movie. Also, apparently the guy who plays Pickford, him and Mila Jovovich like began a romance on the set and kind of alienated themselves from the crew, which is kind of why they're not in the movie at the end. Like Pickford's supposed to be in Wooderson's spot at the end when they're together on the football field and when they're riding away in the car at the very end. Like that was originally conceptualized as being Pickford. Because I mean, in the beginning, you can see him and Randy are kind of close friends, but because of the whole actor situation, they kind of changed the direction of the movie. McConaughey was only supposed to be in like one scene, I think, and have like a couple of lines, but I guess he just popped off the screen so much. Like this is his first movie ever, and he kind of just exploded into the credit. I believe it's his first feature film ever.
I'm gonna look into that. You keep going.
He'd done like a Coors Light commercial or something like that before, but this is like his first actual film, and this is crazy because this is like one of his most iconic characters. He has so many quotable lines, and a lot of them I think were made up on the spot. But yeah, this is a movie this is my second favorite Linklater. It's very, very close to being number one. I've grown to love it a lot more recently. I've probably watched it like 5 times in the last 2 months, and it's something that I feel like I could always throw on, just because it's like a great hang. And I think that's what I like the most about Linklater's being in his world. You never want to leave that, and I think that's something that Days nails so perfectly. And yeah, like the music's amazing. I love Parker Posey when she's like yelling at the girl, and she's yelling air raid, and then that line at the end of that scene where she's like, "Wipe that face off your head, bitch." It's just, she's a hilarious side character. They're kind of all side characters in a way, like kind of Boatman said. But again, it's a movie that you want to find yourself in. Like you wish you were with these characters. It's so laid back, and it's not taking itself too seriously, I think. But it's, I don't know, it raises some interesting ideas as well, like sort of philosophically about sort of youth and expectations when you're in the car with Anthony Rapp and Goldberg and I think Marissa Ribisi. I think Giovanni Ribisi's sister. Ribisi, but yeah, I think every actor is spot on. Wiley Wiggins as Mitch Kramer is so awkward, and I think that's so perfect. Like I was mentioning before we went on air, he's constantly touching his face, and that's like a super awkward thing that only like 13-year-olds do all the time, and I think that's so perfectly accurate to his character. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. Like you have Pink as this interesting character in the middle that kind of ebbs and flows between different social groups. And I think that's what makes the movie work, is that he hangs out with the jocks, but also the stoners and also the nerds. So you can kind of go between all of them, and you see the different experiences of kind of a day in the life of Lee High School. And Linklater is obsessed with like specific time frames, and this is a one-night movie basically.
Sure.
And I think he nails the perfect atmosphere of what kind of the good memories of high school feel like when you think about, oh, that one night. Like it's not a big moment, like it's not you graduating, it's not you like losing your virginity or whatever. It's just this night where you guys all had a bunch of fun and you drove around and drank some beers and had fun at the Moon Tower. And I think that's kind of what Linklater's best at. It's amazing.
And that's definitely the reasons why like I enjoyed the film. Like when I did see it, I remember it like I think the words you said was like laid back. It's a comfy movie. Yeah. Like it's just that's definitely the appeal to it. I am the type of person who does like to have the ABC plot, but for some reason with his movies that I have seen, I like the characters so much I don't really care. That was Matthew McConaughey's first film. He was in a TV episode of something beforehand, but it was his first film. The cast in this movie is, you already named off a few, but like I think people forget Ben Affleck's in this movie.
O'Banion, yeah, the moment of him getting paint dumped on him is like one of the best moments of the entire movie. It's so gratifying.
Yeah, but the cast is just absolutely insane. So they were picking up people that they knew were going to be big, I guess, or something, or they predicted it. I don't know, but
it's a Linklater thing to discover actors.
I guess so. Boatman, what else you got? What about the actors in this? What are your favorite characters?
In a movie for like 2 seconds. She's like a small cameo. She's
you say Renee Zellweger? Is that who you're talking about? I didn't catch what you said.
Renee Zellweger.
Yeah, I didn't. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, she's in the movie for like 2 seconds. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot of great stuff. I think, Floyd kind of being this like middle ground. One of my favorite scenes though is when they're talking about Gilligan's Island, the girls in the bathroom.
Wait, in the bathroom, the male sex fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the male pornographic fantasy. Yeah, that's hilarious.
Wait, so there's
the professor is sexy.
Yes, Gilligan's Island is we'll talk about that again later.
I just caught that, so that's very funny.
Well, there's the whole conversation too where there's a scene in the classroom where they're ranking all the Gilligan's Island theme songs. I think go ahead, Boatman, sorry.
Oh, I just said the ranking of the episodes. I mean.
Yeah, like every single episode.
Yeah.
I think an underrated character in this is Don Dawson, played by Sasha Jensen. He's one of the funniest characters of the whole movie. When he's outside the classroom trying to get the girl to come with him, and he's like doing all the stuff with his tongue, and then he's like propositioning his teacher. It's absolutely hilarious, and it's like easily one of my favorite characters in the entire movie. I will say though, Joy Lauren Adams, her voice is really annoying sometimes, and it makes it a little hard to watch the scenes she's in, which is another reason Chasing Amy, don't love that as much as I otherwise maybe would. But a ton of memorable characters in this.
Well, actually, so the other movie we picked, we'll come back to Dazed and Confused, because I feel like there's a lot to talk about with both of these movies. Paul, the movie you picked was Everybody Wants Some. I had never seen it, so I went out and I bought it just for you, and I watched it. And I watched it this afternoon. Really enjoyed it quite a bit. I think the performances were what kind of got me the most. I really like Blake Jenner. Every time, that's his name, right? Blake Jenner.
Yeah.
Every time I've seen him in something, I've enjoyed him. And I really liked. I can't remember because I've seen it one time. The other blonde mustache guy,
Glenn Powell.
Thank you.
Glenn Powell as Finn. Yeah, he's playing Goose's son in. Tom Cruise's son in Top Gun.
In Maverick. Yes, yeah. Absolutely great. I thought he was fantastic. But this one, again, I haven't seen Dazed and Confused in so long. I think that's why initially I'm just like all of a sudden like, yeah, everybody wants some, but I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. Doug Castle is saying what we're thinking. It's the spiritual sequel to Dazed. But Paul, why don't you get into it? Why did you pick this one? Is it your favorite, arguably, then at this point?
Not even arguably. This is my favorite Linklater. Dazed is like a reasonably close second, but I think this is just a movie I connected to so quickly. I was actually pretty late to it. I only saw it early last year. The first time I saw it, I watched it 5 times in the first week, just because I feel like I was addicted to this world that he created in South Texas, and I think I wanted to be with these characters every single day. This is, I think, the perfect hang movie where I think every scene you find yourself wanting to be in, and every character is memorable for one way or another. I love Justin Street as Jay Niles, like one of the funniest side characters in like any movie for me. Like when he's like doing like the air thrusts and he gets in the fight at the bar.
Yeah.
But for me, Finnegan is my favorite Linklater character. For me, I think he's the most entertaining. He's got so many interesting things to say. He's like a huge contradiction, but at the same time, he's like wise beyond his years, and it's just hilarious. Again, I just love Glenn Powell, but I think his character is perfect. And I mean, I love Wyatt Russell too as Willoughby. He's very funny. When they walk in on him pitching naked, and he's like, "Strike 3." Amazing. It's so funny. And there's all those little moments like that I think make the movie as good as it is. I mean, I think the most famous scene and probably the most memorable for most people is the rapper's delight scene in the car, which I think is like one of my favorite movie scenes ever. It's one of the ones that I've watched the most times. I just find myself going back, and it's got these little touches. You know, it's got like some people like saying the wrong lyrics to the song, which is like what would happen in real life if you're with your friends in a car, like missing little words here or there. Sure. The whole movie is just like kind of a big party. It's the time frame thing. It's one weekend, and it all takes place in that one weekend. And I think it's great. And I think compared to Days, I also like how fully realized the characters are. I think they're more real people. I think Beverly is more of a real person than any female gets to be in Days. And I think that the characters, just in general, more about who they are as people. There's all just these great bits, and it's just a place that I want to be in, is watching that movie all the time. And it's one of my favorite movies ever. And yeah, there's a ton of other reasons, but that's kind of like the general gist of why I love it so much.
Yeah, I think that's another reason why initially I'm liking it more than Dazed, is the fact that we actually get a full weekend and the characters are a little bit fleshed out more and more. I think that, because correct me if I'm wrong, Dazed is one day, correct?
One night.
Starts
it's not
when
even
they're getting out
a
of
full day, really. Yeah,
they're like
3
getting out of
It's like 3 p.m. to like 5 the next morning or something.
Yeah, so it's like you don't get you're getting a lot of character in that time, but when you have the course of a weekend and you have the course of maybe 20 more minutes of screen time, you get quite a bit more out of it. And there is a main protagonist here, I think, even though the movie doesn't really have a plot per se. You have, is it Jake, correct? Is Blake?
Jake Bradford.
Yeah. He's your main character. And even though you have all of these characters, you're more or less following it through his eyes, and that helped me gravitate towards it more. But Boatman, what do you think about this movie?
Oh, this is a great film. I wouldn't call it. I personally can't quite call it better than Dazed and Confused, but also this is one that I haven't watched a ton, because when I first saw it, I didn't like it.
Oh,
didn't click. Then I watched it again. I revisited it like just a couple months ago, actually. I was like, okay, I was wrong about this. I actually really like it, because I saw it when I was like 17, so like 2 years ago.
So last week. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that. But yeah, I have been rewatched it a lot, but the last time I rewatched it, I really enjoyed it. What I love is kind of the characters going to all the different subcultures. They go to like the disco environment. They go to this country environment. They go to the punk environment. They go where the theater kids are. Kind of chameleoning. That's not a word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I got what you mean.
Transforming into these different environments and doing all this stuff, and I really like that. I love Oz, the theater kid's house.
Of course you do.
I mean, you're not wrong. You are not wrong. But no, that stuff is all cool. But yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in that. The characters, I like the side characters a lot more than Jake Bradford. Jake Bradford's a good character, don't get me wrong. But like, I think him getting a lot more screen time, I just always feel more like I want to spend more time with these side characters rather than Jake Bradford.
Which side character specifically besides Finn, I think, is the sort of obvious one.
I mean, I'm trying to remember. I'll be honest, I don't remember the character names, but Glenn, or not Glenn Powell, but obviously Finn, the guy who's like the overconfident pitcher.
Jay Niles, Raw Dog.
Perkins. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, again, I don't remember all the characters, but
they've all got something.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the thing is like you don't know a lot about Jake.
Yeah.
I think you know that he was, the star pitcher for his team in high school and now he's the freshman, but you actually get quite a bit about the other characters. Like I feel like you get more than just this one trait. I think Jake is just our conduit to walk through the story.
I do think that changes a little bit in the scene with him and Beverly on the lake, and I think that is maybe one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's probably not that deep, but I actually find it pretty profound. His story about writing the essay about Sisyphus and how people think of it as a punishment, but he thinks of it as a blessing because it gives him something to focus in and to potentially find meaning in. And I find that actually like really profound, and I love the way he links that to his baseball aspect of his life. And I think that's a really cool idea, and it shows him as sort of a deeper thinker than you might think, because otherwise he comes off as pretty generic, like standard, like nice dude, but not particularly interesting. But I think that's the moment where I think he becomes more interesting to me. And I think him and Beverly sharing that conversation opens them as characters up to be potentially more than like these simply sort of bland blank canvas people for the audience to experience the rest of the film through. And I think that little moments like that are what make Linklater so great. It's like, it seems like a really, casual one-off little story, but I think it informs so much about who their characters are now and who they will become later. And there's so many small things like what the teacher writes on the board, frontiers, are where you find them at the very end of the movie. I find that like a really interesting idea as well. And I think that's something that Linklater likes doing, is peppering in these little things that you can read into if you want, but if not, it's not going to affect your enjoyment of the movie. But I think that's a really cool idea as well. And also, I just think Tyler Hoechlin is like the most believable star athlete in any sports movie I've ever seen.
Yes, agreed.
As an actor, he actually played college baseball, I think, like at San Diego State, I want to say. But Superman, Tyler Hoechlin, he's like so convincing. Like I 100% believe he acts like how a star athlete acts. I played baseball in high school, which might be part of the reason that I connect to this a lot too. There's a lot of small baseball cultural stuff that I think is very, very accurate. There's a sort of pranking stuff in the dugout when they're doing the, you can't put, if he's got his hand on your chest, you won't be able to physically get up, like those little pranks and stuff like that. But I think every little touch makes this movie just so wonderful. And it's just, again, it's a world that I never want to leave. And I wish there was some way to make this into like, like a streaming series where it's like 10 episodes of just like hanging out with the Southeast Texas Cherokees. Like, it's like, it would be so fun, I think, just to be in that world again.
Maybe like a Wet Hot American Summer
style,
that type of thing. Absolutely. I think the important question we need to ask is the guy painting the house actually a scout?
Pete Ward, that is definitely made up. That is 100%, I think 100% made up. Jake kind of exposes all of their stuff, like the "Oh Canada" thing they do is like obviously just like so made up on the spot. And it's funny how like quickly he understands, kind of he sees through their bullshit. Like they're so committed to it that you can't really tell. But like, yeah, when they're making up Pete Ward, the super scout for the Reds, he's got a new disguise every year. They just clearly make stuff up to get joy out of their days, and I think that's kind of what makes them so entertaining.
So now we've talked about both films. These are they're more or less spiritual brother, sister, cousins, whatever you want to call it, Dazed and Confused, and everybody wants some. Again, I've said it 1,000 times. I've only seen each movie once, but it's very clear. You can tell that I think when he was making Everybody Wants Some, he was trying to make that spiritual sequel, and was doing so like he didn't remake the movie. I think he just went in with the intentions of, let me try this again and try it differently, and maybe I can make something better or just as good. Do we agree? Do we disagree? How do we feel about these two movies as like a package?
I mean, he's talked about it, Linklater. Like, and he was working on a movie in like the late 2000s, which he stopped working on to begin working on this. So he's been working on this for a while. He's openly said it's like very much supposed to be both a spiritual successor to Days, but also he said in a way it's kind of a spiritual sequel to Boyhood, because at the end of Boyhood, it's a guy going off to college, and this is sort of like an idea of what that first college experience could be like for him. So I think it's interesting that to think of Mason and Jake as sort of like surrogate, the same person in a way. But I mean, yeah, he talked about it pretty openly. Yeah.
I also think that like Mitch Kramer from Dazed and Confused and Jake Bradford is very similar. They're both very much, they're both pitchers. They're both, based on, the time frame, it would make sense. Mitch Kramer's a freshman, 1976.
76. Yeah.
The freshman in college in 1980. It would make sense time-wise anyway. They're very, very similar characters, and also personality-wise, they're very similar. And they're both kind of the observers into their worlds. Mitch Kramer being kind of the observer, the audience surrogate into this kind of high school world, whereas Jake Bradford is the audience surrogate into the college world.
Do we think that there's ever room or possibilities for him to do this again? Because I don't know where he would go with this. I think that it would be very interesting to do kind of like another movie like this, maybe getting into post college, or I don't know. I'm just spitballing, but I think that he clearly is good at doing this type of movie. Yeah. Do we think that he could do this again, or even wants to do this again? Because I feel like, in my perception of his career, he spent so much time doing Boyhood that post Boyhood, it's just what is he going to do next? And
at this point, the only decade he's never made a movie set in is the 90s, which he did kind of set a lot of movies in the 90s. I mean, he did, because obviously he made movies that were set in present day back in the 90s, but he's never made a period piece set in the 90s like Everybody Wants Some, Dazed and Confused.
I think it's tough though, because he draws so much from his personal experience to make these, and he was growing up in the 70s and 80s. Yes. He played college baseball, so I think a lot of this is based specifically on his life. So I think it'd be tough for him to do anything post-college, maybe a sort of kicking and screaming-ish kind of post-college lull where people don't know where they're at in their lives.
Sure.
But I mean, I would love to see him sort of take a stab at it. I just don't know where that would go, just because it's very clear that he's writing about his own experience. There's a lot of shared characteristics in both movies. If you notice, there's the one black guy, and Linklater's talked about he had one black guy he went to high school with. So a lot of this is specifically linked to the way that his kind of childhood and sort of early adulthood manifested. So I think it's tough, because he's probably just at such an interesting place, not a non-interesting place really, post-college. I think that's sort of the period where you're still figuring stuff out. In college and high school, there's a lot more situations for people to come together. I think after that, it's more difficult to find a moment to focus in on. Them being at the party and them being in college is very different in that way.
Yeah, fair enough. Anything else we have to say about these two movies linked? Otherwise, we will move on to the next topic of conversation. Boatman, you got anything?
I think kind of everything that I had to say has already been said. They're both
What
great.
do you guys think of the soundtracks? Which do you prefer? Do you think
Dazed and Confused
either
is
one?
probably
Dazed?
I feel like Dazed is the more pronounced. But like when I was watching Dazed and Confused, I was hearing the soundtrack. Watching Everybody Wants Some, I wasn't really paying it. Like, I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention. But like for me, the soundtrack just kind of it fit right in. It just kind of meshed very well. It's not a bad soundtrack. It just like it worked so well with the movie. I wasn't really thinking about the soundtrack. I haven't obviously gone back to listen to it. The Dazed and Confused one, I feel like for me was more of like it's that song from the 70s. I know, like that's kind of how I feel about that.
I mean, it's tough. I think Everybody Wants Them does incorporate the soundtrack very specifically in a similar way. Linklater is very careful not to use anachronistic music. Like it's only music that would have existed at the time of the movie's release. But I mean, I think Everybody Wants Them's got a ton of great music cues. Like the My Sharona opening bit is, I think, really good. Obviously, they're singing Rapper's Delight in the car. There's the scene where they're practicing where it's playing Whip It by Devo. I think that's an amazing musical scene. There's a bunch of like other, like when they're at the party and like the party at their own house and it's playing Parliaments Give Up the Funk. I think there's a lot of underrated music moments in Everybody Wants Them.
I think part of the difference is Dazed and Confused set in 1976, which is a very like pronounced era of music. There's a very specific style in 1976. 1980 music was still kind of forming. The disco and the 70s style music was kind of dying and the 80s style music was being born. So it's kind of like this weird kind of in-between area where you are getting a lot of the new wave like Whip It, and you're getting the birth of rap with Rapper's Delight. You're getting more some 70s disco songs when they're in the I want to say the club's called both. Yeah, Sound Machine. What is it?
I think it's Sound Wave, right? Sound
Machine?
Yeah.
Sound Machine, that's right, I think.
Is it Sound Wave?
I'll look it up. You keep going.
I think it is Sound Machine. That is also the Pitch Perfect 2 villain team, but I believe it is Sound Machine.
All right. Well, whatever it is, like, you're getting a bunch of different. It's kind of a weird amalgamation of genres, whereas Dazed and Confused is very much like settled in the 70s rock scene.
But I think that's indicative of the time that it came out. I think that that's sort of the point, is that the musicality was starting to open up, where I think popular music was still very centrally focused. Like, I mean, even a big drive of the movie is for them to get Aerosmith tickets in Dazed and Confused. That's sort of like their goal at the end of the movie. So I think music is maybe a more pronounced. I don't know. It's tough because also in Everybody Wants Them, they're just in different environments, so the music landscape naturally changes so much.
For sure.
You talked about the Gilligan's Island thing, So they play the Gilligan's Island theme song, like a punk cover of it when they're at the punk club, and they even make a point where Jake points out it's just the Gilligan's Island theme song, and I think it's funny that sort of is a through line that runs through both movies. Is this sort of odd fascination with Gilligan's Island as a show and as a music sort of source.
Do these movies? Do you guys believe these movies take place in the same like world or the same like?
No, I'm not really big on like if a movie does not explicitly take place in the same universe as another movie. I'm not like one of those people who's like, oh, this is probably this. Like, I'm not like a big like Disney, it's all the same universe kind of theory guy.
Sure.
I just feel like a movie takes place when it takes place, and a movie can just be a movie. It doesn't have to be connected to other movies to be like worthwhile or anything. Like, I just think it exists on its own. And I think that's what I like about these movies, is it's contained. It feels like it's a full world, but it's like its own thing, and that's what I like about them.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to watch Everybody Wants Some and say to yourself, "This is Mitch Kramer," you don't have to think too hard, make too many mental jumps to like connect Big Bradford and Mitch Kramer, but at the same time, they're very separate films, even though they have very similar tones and stuff.
For me, it's just like, why? Like, it's just like that doesn't really add anything, I think, to the movie.
Sure. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Because, I mean, if there was maybe more hints of like, or they name drop like the school.
Yeah, if he says like, I went to Lee High School, like that obviously be a much different thing. But I think they try to keep them relatively separate.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we will move on to talk about the film that is coming out this weekend. Where'd You Go, Bernadette? That is what we're going to talk about. It stars Cate Blanchett, one of arguably the best actresses around. Like, do we disagree? Do we agree? Like, she's fantastic and everything. I feel like
pretty good.
Yeah, she's pretty good. She's won 2 of them Oscars. So I'm very excited to see this movie. I like the cast a lot. I don't know much about it. I saw like a couple trailers, and I know it's a Linklater movie, so I'm gonna go and see it. But Boatman, what about you? Are you excited for it?
I'm excited, but like I'm not super excited. Like none of the trailers have wowed me. I'm definitely gonna see it, but also I don't think Linklater's trailers typically are wow-y in general. Like they're not very like hit you over the head with, you know, this is gonna be great trailers. They're very much okay. Like they're trying to kind of give the plot of the movie, which is hard because a lot of his movies are so plotless. So honestly, like I hope it'll be good. I don't really know. I have to wait and see to actually see the movie, but I'm definitely gonna see it.
Yeah, another person that's in the movie that I forgot to mention, Billy Crudup. I really like him in pretty much everything I've ever seen him in.
Zach Ford is shaking his fist at the screen right now.
Does he not
like he hates Billy Crudup? Yeah, but no, I don't know. But I mean, this is an interesting case where I think this is a super hard to adapt novel. So this is like it's a
Can you
novel
explain it to us?
Written by Maria Semple. It's sort of not told as a straight up story. It's mostly told through like a bunch of emails and transcripts and memos, and then there are occasional her daughter of the Bernadette, the woman who goes missing, occasionally has random interludes, but it's told in an unconventional sort of way. So it's going to be, I think, tough to turn that into a movie. I'm super fascinated to see how that's going to work. But it's also like, you know, mystery and comedy is something that I think is a little hard to walk. Like it's a line that's tough to toe. I think like something like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Clue do it pretty well. But I think other than that, it's hard to make something engaging but also funny. Like you have to take it seriously but not too seriously. I think Linklater is one of the few directors that can pull that off. But I definitely would be lying if I said I wasn't a little nervous. Like they moved the date a couple of times, and it's
it was supposed to come out in like January, right, or something.
Yeah,
like
so
that?
I don't know. It's definitely like I'm super fascinated to see it. I have no idea what it's going to turn out like.
Yeah, and even it comes out on Friday, and I'm looking right now, and it doesn't have any critic reviews yet. That's a little bit nerve-wracking, but I mean, I've never seen a Linklater movie that I didn't at least enjoy or walk out going, okay, I'll go to the next one. I don't know how you guys feel about Last Flag Flying, but that's probably like
I like it.
I liked it, so it's like I'm excited to go to the next one, and that's the thing is like there's nothing about these trailers that have made me, like Boatman said, go super crazy, but I haven't studied Linklater trailers, but maybe the way he cuts his trailers are just a little wacky, but it's also maybe like if the plot is as not non-existent, but just told in a weird way, like it is in the book, maybe that could be the reason for that. But I'm still excited. I mean, it's got a great cast, and it could be interesting. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near his top movies, but it's hard to say when we haven't seen it.
I think ultimately he's the director, I think, at least for me, who has earned enough cachet to where I'll see essentially anything that he puts out. It doesn't really matter what the movie is. I think that I'll pretty much watch anything that he makes. Like, you know, he can make kind of any different genre, and I'll always be interested to see what happens, especially because this is kind of outside of his normal sandbox. So I think that's going to be an interesting approach for him, just because, you know, it's based on a book. It's sort of unconventional. It's kind of weird mystery comedy, and I think that stuff kind of draws me in. And I think, I mean, you know, maybe it could be his best movie. Pretty doubtful because he's got a lot of great movies. I am a little bummed that there's a few that I wanted to talk about we didn't get to talk about. I sort of was considering going a different route, not picking my favorite, but picking sort of an underseen one.
Sure. So
I thought about either picking Me and Orson Welles or A Scanner Darkly, which are two of my favorite Linklater movies that I think don't get a ton of shine. Also, again, the before movies are like essentially perfect. It's just tough for me to revisit because they're almost too real for me sometimes. Like the emotional heartbreak and like the very difficult relationship stuff, like is almost too accurately portrayed to where I think it's hard to watch that frequently, just because it's really draining. Sunset's my favorite. That is probably my third favorite Linklater movie. It's pretty up there. But
is it what is the order?
Filmmaker.
It's
Sunset is the second. It's sunrise, sunset, and then midnight.
Okay.
Yes. Sunset's
I mean, Sunset's your favorite. The second one.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the one where it's like told in like. Is Midnight also told in like real time?
Sort of.
I know Sunset's like it's told. Yeah, because Midnight's not told within like a span of an hour and a half, but Sunset is like told within a span of 2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like just like it's basically just the afternoon. Like that's the entire kind of thing, and I really like that one. There's a lot of like the ticking clock and all that. There's a line that I could say, but I don't want to say that because it would kind of spoil the movie for anyone.
I'm gonna watch them. I swear, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to say it. But Paul, you know what line I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too. I'm just looking at his IMDb because the last thing I was going to suggest, if there's any other movies that we want to throw out there, I think it's interesting that Sunrise, Sunset, and Midnight all have like a 9-year gap.
People have been hypothesizing that 2022 could potentially be another movie.
Does the third one set it up?
I mean, none of them really set it up, but I think it's like just like a story about these two people's lives, and I think that it could work if they did it.
Cool. So you would want to see another one if he did it.
Yeah.
If he announced it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would buy my tickets as soon as they went on sale. Like I think that might be like the best film. Objectively speaking, like maybe the best film trilogy ever. So.
Oh wow! Damn. Okay.
Honestly,
I really need to watch it.
I agree with you. I think that is like probably my pick for my favorite film trilogy. I think it's great. All three I love. They fluctuate back and forth for me. Some like right now, since it's my favorite, but like it used to be Midnight, and now it's back to Sunset. And Sunrise is great too. And I think they're all like in Sunrise. I like Ethan Hawke more. In Sunset, I like Julie Delpy more. In Midnight, I like them both equally.
Yeah. All right, so they're definitely movies that I need to watch. Yes. I know that we could argue about something else that's fun with him. Paul, you hate one of these films that Boatman likes. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just think Bernie's pretty bad. I think it does a terrible job of trying to humanize someone that I don't think is worth humanizing. And I just don't think it's a particularly gripping film, and it's not satisfying. And I just don't like the people in it, and I think that makes it really hard to watch. And it's not. I don't think it's really teaching anything either. I don't know. It's a weird. I just think it's a weird misfire, and it goes against the stuff that makes him a great filmmaker. And it just, I don't know. It's kind of an upsetting movie for me.
I've seen half of this film. It was like on demand or something, and I watched like a little bit of it, and then it was one of those things where like, oh, I gotta go do something, and I just never finished it. I know what happens in the end. Like I kind of know what the gist of the movie is, but I maybe saw 30 minutes of it, 35 minutes of it, and was like, yeah, whatever. And I, again, didn't know it was a Linklater movie, even after I had seen part of it. So, I
mean, but yeah. Probably it might be the first Linklater movie I ever saw, like even before School of Rock, because I came to School of Rock a little bit later than a lot of people. I didn't see that till I was like 12 or 13, and I saw Bernie like right when it came out. That was like the first one, which is weird for an 11-year-old to like see, but like it was
a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it was out in theaters, and I was like, I want to see something, so I saw it, and I really like. I think Jack Black's great. You can get into the whole like real life, thing where it is based on a real life person and the questionable morality and all that. And I get that angle, and that's a whole rabbit hole, but I like it just as a movie. I think as a movie, it's a very fascinating kind of picture of somebody does something inherently and morally wrong, but they're also inherently loved by this community and the kind of conflict that arises within that. And the victim is the person that is a terrible person. I think that's kind of fascinating. I think Shirley MacLaine is brilliant. She's fantastic in the film. And I love the kind of mockumentary style that they've got going on. Well, not really mockumentary, because I believe like the people that they're interviewing are all the actual like townspeople, if I'm not mistaken, right?
think it's been a couple of years for me.
And I want to say that all the people that are like being interviewed, so it's kind of like it's almost like one of those documentaries where they like recreate the events, except it has more of like a narrative flow, basically.
Yeah. Are there any other movies you guys wanted to bring up from Linklater?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to, again, the two that I mentioned earlier, Me and Orson Welles and A Scanner Darkly, I think are two that aren't really talked about a lot, but I think are really interesting works. A Scanner Darkly is probably most famous just for being this rotoscoped, weird animation style. It's based on a Philip K. Dick novel. And, it's got like weird, it's got like an in-between period of career, RDJ. It's like in between Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Zodiac, which is actually like my favorite period of his career personally. Yeah. But I think it's a super interesting departure from what what Linklater had sort of been interested in. And I think it's a lot darker than most of his other movies. It's a lot more, I don't know, it's more thrilling in a lot of ways. It's this kind of weird sci-fi blend mix, but I think it's a like super interesting movie, and I really like it a lot. And then Me and Orson Welles, I think, is just a great drama that's kind of outside the box too. It's like it's so pretty conventionally. It's not a lot of weird stuff going on. And Zac Efron is amazing in the movie. Like, I think it's like the best I've ever seen Zac Efron. I think he's a really, really solid performance in there. So
yeah,
I mean, Linklater's got a lot of different types of movies, I think, but those are two that I think go a little under the radar, unfortunately, just because they're not the flashy sort of famous ones.
Sure. And that's very true, because I've never seen either. I've got a lot of movies to watch for sure after those recommendations. What about you, Boatman? Anything else you want to bring up?
You mentioned it briefly earlier. I really enjoyed Last Flag Flying. I think that movie did not get enough attention. I think Cranston and Carell are like brilliant in it, and it's kind of a weird, not a sequel.
It kind of is a sequel to the Last Detail with Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson, Randy Quaid film from the 70s.
It's adapted from the sequel novel, although they're not. The film is technically
characters, basically, but
all right,
cool. Got, very weird fascination with those sort of belated sort of sequel, not really sequel, pseudo, pretty much.
I've definitely got a lot of movies to watch. I'm glad we talked about a couple movies that I actually have seen, but I'm glad you guys have recommended some other ones for me. But that is going to do it for us for this episode. We've been chatting for about an hour, and thank you guys so much for watching. Those of you who are still watching, please hit that like button, hit subscribe to Multiplex. We've got a lot of great matches in Warzone, Fandom, Mayhem at the Multiplex. I'm so sorry it didn't go up when we said, but it's coming this weekend, and it will be here, and it will be awesome, and we will all have fun. It'll be great. So be sure to subscribe so you see those videos when they drop this weekend. Paul, do you have anything you want to plug? Where can the people find you?
So I'm doing this thing on August 31st. Not many people probably have heard about it, but I have a Schmodown title match live in New York, so check that out. If you want to, just see me reviewing / logging whatever movies, my letterbox, just search my name, Paul Oyama, and you'll find me pretty quickly. That's pretty much it. Yeah, just talk movies.
Yep. Boatman, what about you?
I'm doing movie Warzone. We're having a lot of fun over there. But seriously, we've got a lot of good content coming out. We've got Mayhem at the Multiplex coming out, where you will see Ethan Beller take on Dustin Mason for a spot against me in the semifinals. You've got me and Sean Sandberg taking on Blockbuster Video for #1 contender to see who will take on Team 80s. And then after that, on Monday, you will have the 2 semifinal matches. So me versus the winner of Dustin and Beller, and Brian versus Dominic Rizzi. So lots of great content coming your way.
Yeah, Warzone is heating up for sure. Fandom is also heating up. We've got at Mayhem, the team title match. It's going to be me and Robert against Dedicated to Art, so that'll be interesting. And then we've also got me versus Robert in Fandom. That'll be interesting. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Also, Nerdgasm Sports, just a ton of great stuff. Be sure to check that out. We worked really hard on it.
Your list sucks. Don't forget.
Your list sucks is actually off this week, but we will be back next week with that. Cody will be back next week with Your List Sucks. That's every Wednesday after show whenever we get to it. But please watch all the things. We put a lot of work into it. Thank you so much for watching this episode, guys. For Kaleb, for Paul, for me, this has been Multiplex Loves Movies. We'll see you guys next time.